Hello. It's my pleasure to present these new results from the Observatory of the Linguistic and Cultural Diversity on the Internet. We are offering, as a public resource, indicators on the presence of language in the Internet. I used to joke and say this is everything you want to know about language in the Internet and you were afraid to ask. But indeed, these results are new. Many indicators are totally new. Nobody has been able so far to produce this type of indicator. I will start with the most elaborated, which I call cyber geography of language families, where we compare the different indicators we are able to produce for each of the language we treat, example Quechua, and put together the language families, language from Africa, from Americas, Arab language, from Asia, and European language. If you want to read that, let's take Africa. Africa represents 9% of the world speakers L1 plus L2, first and second language. Everything will be based on L1 plus L2. Unfortunately, only less than 30% of African language are connected, which means speakers of this language are 30% less connected compared to the world average, which is 57%. Which means that although they represent 9% of the world speakers, they only represent 5% of the people connected to the internet. And much worse, only 2.9% of the contents. The indicator below are just ratio. Virtual presence is the ratio between contents and speakers, and contents productivity is a ratio between contents and connected speakers. The average should be 1, and they are very low, 1.3 or 0.5. We have been processing 329 language, 138 from Africa, mainly indigenous language, and 135 from Asia, the same. Why do we stop at 329? Which is estimated, the number of language connected to the internet, fully connected, is estimated around 500. We are putting this threshold because of bias on the method, and we only take language with more than 1 million L1 speakers. This figure has to be taken with some caution. It is a more or less 20% confidence interval. The main sources are Ethnologue, ITU, and World Bank, plus many indirect sources we are collecting on the internet and we are processing in our model. I am talking only the top language for the presentation, but we have the same data for each one of the 329 language. You can see that the more connected speakers are Norwegian, Danish, Swedish, Catalan, Japanese, Finnish, above 92%. Japanese have the best virtual presence, above 2, which is exceptional, followed by Norwegian, German, Swedish, Danish, Dutch, Finnish, Catalan. In terms of productivity, I would expect English first, obviously, because many people create content in English. Japanese is a surprising first position, but English is very close, and they have a good share. In terms of what are the main language on the internet, we compute Chinese and English at the first place, between 16% and 25% of contents, followed by Spanish, and in third position, Indian, Russian, French, Portuguese, and Arabic between 3 and 4%. We have also a cyber globalization indicator, which is a mixture of different ratios, which weighs the strategic advantage of a language. We are able also to provide table like this one with low bias because it's only connected data and demo-linguistic data. 30% of English speakers connected to the internet are from United States, 12% from India, and so on. At the same time, we were publishing our result for version 3 of our model. Statista, a commercial aggregator of statistics, make a strong statement that English is the internet's universal language, data supported by two sources, W3Text and Internet World Stats. Please pay attention to the two cycle, which is a very important data. I will play with that afterward. For instance, for English, 26% of connected speakers of the internet are English speakers, and 63% of the contents, versus 1.3% of the content for Chinese, in spite of having almost 20% of connected speakers. This is what the site of W3Tech is providing for today: English, Russian, Spanish, Turkish, French. And this is the historical curve, and you see that between 2011, when they start, to today, English has always been above 50% and sometimes above 60%. At the same time, then we publish that the transition of the internet between the domination of European language, English in the lead, toward Asian language and Arabic, Chinese in the lead, is well advanced. And the winner is multilingualism. But African languages are slow to take their place. Totally different vision of language on the internet from two different sources. One, at least, of the two sources must be extremely wrong. If you take the citation, you will see that Statista is extremely cited, 100,000 times, although it's not a direct source, but maybe it's because you must pay to know the actual source, which is, for me, an ethical situation. Internet World Stat have 33,000 citations in Google Scholar, W3Tech content almost 4,000, and we, modest observatory, we hardly reach 100. Is the fame the right criteria to decide? Maybe in social networks and buzzland, probably not in science. You rather check the methodology and assess the bias of each method to know which is right and which is wrong. We are not a newcomer in that field. We have started, we are a pioneer. We started in 1996. Between 1997 and 2007, we were able to provide a series of results. And between 2007 and 2017, we keep working, but we're unable to produce. And in 2017, we start again with a new method, which is reaching maturation now in 2022 with all the bias controlled. So we are now much more confident of our results. So there is a situation since the beginning of the internet between a media coverage of language on the internet stating it is 80% for 15 years, and then it is 60% for another 10 years. While we measure logically a decreasing curve because more and more language are getting inside the internet. So there is a problem here. If you elaborate theories from wrong data, hardly you will get a good theory. So we need to understand what's wrong with W3Tech's method. W3Tech is a very serious company offering more than 25 surveys on different technology towards the web. The problem is that language is a different technology than JavaScript. They apply daily a language recognition algorithm to the homepage, very important, the homepage of the 10 million more visited websites following to Alexa. It's possible to discuss the bias of selecting only the top less than 1% of websites. It's possible to discuss the problem of language recognition algorithm, but the real issue is not here. The real issue is a lack of consideration of multilingualism. Counting homepage instead of web page is putting at the same level of the count a website with one page and a website with 10,000 pages, which is not the right approach. Counting multilingual website as English only because they count one language per website make huge mistake for many websites like Facebook, for instance, where you can choose among 20, 40, 60 different options the language. But the problem is also that many homepage of non-English homepage websites do have some English word or do have an abstract or do have some English mention. If you count this website as English because there is English on the homepage, you are erasing many other linguistic versions. All of that together drive huge counting errors, which are not so complicated to fix. In the document, I offered suggestion to W3Text to make the right counting. You can ask yourself anyway, is it really possible that English speaking internet have been dropping more than half in 10 years, but English content has been growing? You can ask also, is it possible that Chinese and Hindi together, representing almost a quarter of the internet, have only 1.6% of contents? This is where you come back to the two cycles of the Statista show. One of the cycle is number of people connected, the other is content. If you make the ratio, you get what we call the content productivity indicator. Our experience has been that this indicator almost always is included between 0.5 and 2. So if you see 0.08 like for Chinese, 0.03 like for Hindi, 4 for English, there is something which is not believable. The paper is focusing the result and not the methodology, but let me give you some highlight about the methodology we are using. It is an indirect approximation of content. We are not counting, we are trying to approximate from a different perspective. It is based on the observation we have made on the field since 1988 that the content productivity indicator remain always between 0.5 and 2, more or less, which suggests there is some kind of economic law linking for each language demand contents and offer connected speakers. While connected speaker grows, in more or less the same proportion, contents grow. The issue is to evaluate the more or less modulation, which depends on the number of L2 speakers connected, the amount of internet traffic generated in each country, which depend on tariff, digital literacy, cultures, counting the subscription to social network and other applications, weighting the technological support for the language, which is your business, and presence on interface and online transition give an indication. And obviously, the context in terms of information society of the country where the speaker live, e-commerce, online voting, tax management, and so on. So if we are able to collect data about those parameters, we can deduce the modulation, and from that deduce the contents. This is the model we have developed, which use 1,500 indicators separated between internos, usage, traffic interface, and index, and with mathematics, statistics, extrapolation, incomplete source, weighting with connected data, weighting with demo linguistic data, averaging, and so on, we are creating a result. Not in something important, there are very few language data on the internet, but there are much more country data. So we use country data and we transform them into language data by weighting with demo linguistic data. The more consuming time on the work we have been doing has been dedicated to bias. We have been struggling since 2017 to reduce the amount of bias. There is a working assumption which also creates bias that we have not changed, which is the base of the method. All languages share the same percentage of connected people within a country. For instance, if Spain have 80% of people connected following ITU, Spanish speaker in Spain, whether it is L1 or L2, Arabic speakers and Catalan speakers have 82%, which is obviously not the reality. There are differences. This bias forbid us to measure comparison of language within a country, and also to manage a language with low number of speakers. Where is the bias here? The bias is that it gives immigration language figure more important in developed countries than the reality, and reciprocally, European language are probably biased negatively in developing countries. But it is not a strong bias. Anyway, if we check on the bias, we have been addressing them by category: internals, index, content, traffic, interface, and usage. You can see the evolution from V1 to V3, and why now we feel comfortable with V3, where we have managed almost all the bias. At the beginning, the bias were mainly and strongly against ASEAN language, because we have an occidental vision of the internet from the tools. We have to work very hard on that, and maybe today our last result could be the opposite. The European language are maybe negatively biased now in the final result, but not so much. So this is what we get. What we plan to do this year is making us known more, make a database interface to the access, so you can query by language or by ISO code, and still work on the usage indicator, which is favoring not too much maybe Asiatic language. So we forecast to make this type of updates yearly, because we have the data free from ITU and World Bank, the connected person. Our many internet source is free, but it's a heavy workload, maybe every 2-3 years. And the demo linguistic data, which is not evolving so fast, except during crises like today in Ukraine, we use every 4 or 5 years because it is quite expensive. This is a credit of this work. It has been supported mainly by Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie for many versions. Version 2 has been supported and focused on Portuguese by the Instituto Internacional da Língua Portuguesa, with funding of the Brazilian government and coordination of the chair on multilingual of policy for multilingualism. And thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed.